We haven't done all of the 10 million or zillion lines of code we've done in every product, but the couple that I've just seen and had a look at, and the build engineers, the QA engineers, the guys who do the review process, the tools that we're using, these are all industry's best practices. Yes, and I think that's given me a lot of confidence. So I have have a lot of confidence that the code will get better, and that it will start to improve the word that was missing before, which was not about quality, it was about trust. Can we trust? This would be a better collaborative model, because that's what US does well. US is not in the business of building 5G technology. Qualcomm, Texas Instruments and Broadcom and a few others manufacture the components that are used by us and by our competitors. But that's not where the money is, right? The money is in the higher level benefits that you get. And the industries that, and the services industries in particular in the US, could benefit a lot, and they could have taken a lot of these things to market. For example, where do you get all your money from? Export. Export what? Export new service, export new things, not export all the old things, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
1/3 of the world's still not connected. 1/3 of the world could adopt 5G, perhaps faster than the collective 2/3 of the world. What will that tell you about what's going to happen? You'll have changes in the way you flow, that everything flows, if you have that. Several years ago, I can't remember exactly how many, but certainly within the last 10, I can remember one operator very specifically said to us, can you please make your handphone for our market using Firefox? So we did. So we used, now that's not a Huawei OS, that's taking a third-party OS and we put it on here, but a different OS, and they were responsible for the ecosystem. The challenge they have is they couldn't take it to market. Now, whether the timing was wrong, whether the fact that they didn't have the marketing capability to take it, whether they didn't build up the ecosystem of maps, I don't know the answer to it. It could be all of those. It could be that at that time Google was really on the up, and it could be many things. But there's an example of one telecom operator, a global one, who knew the value of having an alternative operating system. They understood it then. You saw Windows also dabble with trying to produce that, and Huawei had made a Windows operating system handphone as well. So we had been producing using other operating systems on our devices and exploring those. But just as I mentioned things like the IoT and all these things relating to smart cities and all that, ecosystem, you want to transform 5G by itself, AI by itself will not transform industries. You need an ecosystem of players.
Production of energy, and then, where is their wastage coming in? Right? I mean, in the production process itself, I think, is not really where 5G has much to do with anything, but it's in the distribution.
Now, if we were to compare on a per megahertz basis in terms of energy consumption of a 5G system compared with a 4G system, the best of the best compared with the best of the best, you're getting somewhere between 10 and 25 to 1 energy efficiency. Now, that's significant. And the reason it's significant, because let's take that example. I can harvest, manufacture, burn to create more energy. But wouldn't it be good if we started consuming less energy? And let's consider that in two aspects. The first one is the traditional players who build their telecom networks, roughly 20% of their total operating cost comes from energy. Excluding the data centers, I'm only talking about the radio part. I'm just talking about this bit that the 5G could influence. So suddenly, you have an opportunity to influence that if you build the network the right way, and we'll come to that in a moment. But you also have the opportunity now to understand that the more people that use devices that work together with this thing called 5G, I'll put that in perspective. A 2G handset generally has one antenna, 3G still one, 4Gs we started to put one antenna, two antenna, four antennas. So I can plow millions of dollars into new network to increase the capacity, or I can just give you a phone or sell you a phone that's got four antennas and suddenly my capacity doubles or quadruples. You get that same type of efficiency with 5G. So the new devices, if we proliferate those, the battery is going to take less time to charge, consume less resources. It's going to last a lot longer. So now you're going to get a double effect, yes? And when you now have restriction of supply, particularly the one with Google and Android, because that now has a perception across the industry and that affects the brand, right? So I'm expecting that the consumer business and the enterprise business, very specifically, will have some challenges because of the brand, because of the way they take the products to market. They're very different. The way the carrier business takes the product to market is through very deep and very extensive engagement with telecom operators. So, of course, as you said, they ask us the question about, what about your business continuity? Just a question very specifically you're asking. We didn't do this yesterday, all right? We didn't think about, we've got one chip we can't use from the US. What are we going to do now? We didn't think about it like that. In 2008, a very reputable company called British Telecom, when we were promoting one product in the UK, said that's a great product, but how do we know that a product's got product life cycle and roadmap, and by the way, have you thought about business continuity? And so they taught us. So we engaged a number of very credible consultants, largely from the US, to teach us about business continuity. And that's not just about the chip, it's about everything related to supply. UK has already launched in 15 cities, and by next month you'll have 3 of the 4 operators will have launched in all the big cities in the UK. I haven't heard anybody else in Europe announce that sort of deployment. Okay? So whether £1.4 billion was too much, but the point is you've got operators who found the way to invest. Now, I can remember the hype we created back in 2017, towards the end of 2017, when we first finalised the standards, and then very early, which was in February the next year, we announced an end-to-end product of 5G. And all the operators in Europe, all of them were saying, I'm not sure what the business model is here, I'm not sure. So we started, a year later, you've sort of got everybody in the UK running after it. Yep, you've now got some investors also in Middle East starting to launch, and now now you've got China advancing also. The US will be different. The reason the US will be different is because of spectrum. They've opted to go for millimetre wave first, which means their deployment can only happen in a certain way, because the millimetre product will not travel as far as C-band or even the lower frequency stuff.
Yeah.
And also you have different type of devices. They weren't the first type of devices that were being developed or considered. So you have a different way that the US is developing or going to market with 5G.